Let's begin. Peter Whitman was the kind of man who made people feel safe. A Chicago-based finance consultant with a calm voice and steady eyes. He had a way of making you believe that things would be okay no matter what. His wife Meera often said he was the calm in every storm. They had been married for 7 years. No kids yet, just the two of them sharing dreams, takeout dinners, and a downtown condo that echoed with the warmth of their laughter. Life wasn't perfect, but it was comfortable. Predictable, stable. Peter volunteered on weekends at a community outreach center near Hyde Park. It wasn't for social brownie points. He just liked helping. He liked hearing stories of people who had lost everything and were still trying. It grounded him. That's where he met Caleb Simmons. Caleb was a whirlwind of humor, sarcasm, and rugged good looks. A marketing creative with a history of bouncing between cities and projects. His energy contrasted Peter's stillness perfectly, and the two became close fast. Peter introduced Caleb to his wife. Caleb introduced Peter to his own wife, Rhea, a soft-spoken book editor with a heart as big as her silence. What started as casual banter between two couples quickly turned into weekly double dates, Sunday brunches, and game nights. There were inside jokes, share playlists, group vacations. On the surface, it was beautiful. Modern friendship done right. But underneath, the first red flag Peter missed was Meera's hesitation. The first time she met Caleb, she blinked twice. Her handshake was too quick. Her smile came half a second too late. Peter noticed but brushed it off. He was too trusting. The second red flag was the coincidence. Meera had mentioned a routine doctor's appointment one afternoon. That same day, Peter caught Caleb leaving the outreach center early, mumbling something about an appointment, too. Peter laughed it off then. But later that night, while watching Meera chop onions, he asked, "How was the checkup?" She paused just for a second. But it was enough. Soon, there were other things. Meera started dressing differently, tighter jeans, red lipstick on a Sunday morning. She began locking her phone and she laughed harder, too hard at Caleb's jokes. Still, Peter said nothing. He was raised to believe that love was patient. But patience can become paralysis. The collapse came fast after that. One night, he told Meera flat out. "Caleb told me everything." He hadn't. It was a bluff, but her face crumbled. She stammered, lied, confessed partially, then denied more. So Peter took her phone, went straight to Caleb, and this time the truth came out like a bullet to the chest. Yes, they had history. Yes, they'd reconnected. Yes, they'd been meeting behind Peter and Rhea's backs. And yes, they had slept together more than once. Peter didn't scream. He didn't punch walls. He simply returned home, tossed Meera's phone in her lap, and said, "Couldn't warn your boyfriend, huh?" Then came the packing, the silent folding of clothes. The ghost-like walk down the stairs, and then he called Rhea, put Meera on the spot, told Rhea the whole truth. 2 families broke that night. But Peter's revenge, it had only just begun. Peter didn't cry. He didn't beg her to stay, and he didn't ask why. As Meera stood trembling by the doorway, suitcase in hand, he opened the door without a word. She tried to speak, her voice thick with tears, her lips moving with pleas that never made it out. But Peter's eyes had gone distant. There was no room left for conversation. Only consequence. She left, and with her, the illusion of their life disappeared. Peter didn't collapse that night. Instead, he poured himself a glass of water, sat on their shared couch, the one they'd saved 3 months' salary for, and stared at the blank television screen until the room faded into shadows. It wasn't until the next morning, brushing his teeth, that he noticed something odd. There on the bathroom mirror were tiny smudges of her fingerprints, remnants of the fog she'd wiped away every morning. A habit, a pattern, a trace. And Peter realized then he didn't just lose his wife. He'd lost everything: routine. So he did what he did best. He rebuilt. But not all rebuilding is noble. Sometimes it's cold, strategic. He filed for divorce by the end of the week. Fast, clean, emotionless. He knew she had no legal claim to his assets. The condo was in his name. The joint account emptied into a private one by noon that Monday. The gym membership canceled. Streaming passwords changed. He deleted every photo, every text thread. He didn't block her. No, that was too easy. He muted her number. Silence was the cruelest rejection. As for Caleb, Peter didn't rage. He went for something sharper. Reputation. Caleb had just secured a big client at his boutique agency, an auto brand, family-oriented, conservative. Peter had a friend who worked in corporate PR. It didn't take much. Just one email anonymously sent. Curious if your latest brand ambassador engages in ethical behavior behind closed doors. Attached a few screenshots from Meera's phone. Just enough to raise questions. Within 2 weeks, Caleb was dropped from the contract. Quietly, no formal statement, but the whispers spread. In that world, even rumors could poison a career. Peter moved through his days with a robotic. He started going to a new gym, taking up running along Lake Michigan's trail. He refused therapy. Talking felt too weak, but he wrote in a notebook every night. Not poetry, not sadness, just facts, observations, strategies. His world was smaller, but colder now. Cleaner. Until one day, it cracked again. A package arrived. No sender, no return label, just a small cardboard box placed neatly at his door. Inside was a photo Caleb and Meera taken recently at a cafe Peter had once taken Meera to on their anniversary, written on the back. You weren't enough. It wasn't signed, but Peter didn't need a signature. The cruelty had fingerprints he recognized all too well. He didn't flinch. Didn't rage. He picked up the phone, called Rhea. They met at a quiet diner outside the city. And as she sat across from him, eyes weary, voice still fragile, he said calmly, "They're still seeing each other. And they think we're done." She blinked, swallowed, then said something Peter didn't expect. "Then let's give them something to talk about." That night, a new game began. Not about love, not about rebound, but about control. Two hearts broken by betrayal. Now aligned with one goal. Justice without noise. Peter and Rio weren't lovers. Not even close. But they played the part with Oscar-worthy precision. It started with a dinner reservation, Meera's favorite restaurant. Peter booked a table for two, knowing exactly where they'd be seated. He even requested the same booth Meera once called our corner. Then he and Rhea showed up dressed elegantly, comfortable, laughing, not too loud, but just enough to turn heads. They didn't hold hands. They didn't flirt, but they were together. And every movement was calculated. 3 tables over. A woman dropped her spoon when she recognized Peter. And she wasn't alone. The photo landed on Meera's phone before dessert arrived. No caption, just rage. By the next morning, Meera was calling. First once, then 4 times. Peter didn't answer. Rhea didn't either. Let them wonder. Let them stew. But that was just the opening act. Peter knew Caleb had ambitions. He'd once mentioned wanting a pitch for a rebranding deal with a prominent eco-startup. Their founder, a client of Peter's. And when she asked Peter at a fundraiser if he had any thoughts on Caleb's firm, he gave a measured smile. He's talented, Peter said. "Just not always reliable." That was it. One sentence, no accusations, but it was enough to shut the door Caleb had spent months trying to pry open. Meanwhile, Rhea made her own moves. She volunteered to help with a charity event Caleb's agency had supported in the past. She didn't mention the affair. Instead, she charmed the board, worked, and positioned herself as a media consultant. They loved her. Within weeks, she was brought on as a permanent contributor. Guess whose firm was quietly replaced? Caleb's revenge wasn't loud. It was composed. It was structural. Peter's daily life remained unchanged on the surface. Wake up, run, shower, work, cook dinner alone, sleep. But underneath that rhythm lived a fire, one that burned steadily with each setback Caleb and Meera suffered. But even as the victories piled up, Peter wasn't untouched. There were nights he lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if his silence made him as cold as their betrayal. There were mornings he looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the man shaving. Still, he pressed on because this wasn't about healing. Not yet. It was about balance, about taking back the dignity they had stripped from him with every lie, every secret meeting, every just a friend moment. One afternoon, he got a text from an unknown number. "You win." He didn't need to ask who it was from. Peter stared at the message, then deleted it. No reply. He didn't need to win. He just needed them to lose. But the part that neither Caleb nor Meera expected, that Peter's revenge didn't end there. Peter had always played the long game. He never wanted to be the man who yelled in public or sought chaos. He wanted permanence, a punishment that couldn't be undone with flowers or apologies. And now it was time. Meera had moved in with Caleb. Peter had known for weeks. Quietly, discreetly, but the walls have eyes. And Peter had built his own silent network. Friends, contacts, discreet observers who owed him small favors. She thought she was safe in a reinvention. Thought she'd escaped consequence, but Peter was building something. Months earlier, while finalizing their divorce, Peter had noticed something odd in their shared financial records. A $50,000 transfer years ago from Meera's personal account to a business startup Caleb had been involved in before they were married. It had failed spectacularly, but Peter had the receipts. The funds have been moved during their marriage from a joint investment account Meera had access to. That meant community property, his money too. Peter sat down with a corporate litigation attorney. "Can we do anything about this?" he asked calmly. The lawyer smiled with the right leverage. "Absolutely." So Peter filed a quiet but powerful motion claiming misappropriation of shared funds. Civil liability. It wasn't criminal. He wasn't interested in jail. He was interested in shame. Caleb got served during a brand launch party. Meera was right next to him. Photos went online within minutes. Caleb, flushed and furious, gripping the envelope like it was a bomb. Rhea, watching from a distance, gave a small smile. She knew it wasn't about money. It was about exposure. Caleb lost his next investor pitch. Meera's new job, one Caleb had helped her secure at a PR firm, mysteriously went cold after an anonymous tip to HR exposed her prior conflict of interest. And the final blow. Peter bought the rights to Caleb's failed startup domain. Cheap, discarded, forgotten. He redirected it to a simple white page. One sentence. This is what betrayal builds. No names, no threats, just silence and truth. It went viral. And in that moment, Peter wasn't just the man they betrayed. He became the mirror they couldn't escape, but revenge his limits. And Peter had reached his. He declined the court-ordered compensation, told his lawyer to settle for a symbolic $1. It was never about money. It was about restoring the weight of his name. He went home that night, opened the windows of his condo, and let the cold Chicago air rush in. He stood there for an hour, breathing, alive, alone, and then he did something he hadn't done in months. He called someone Rhea, but not for revenge, for something else. The line rang twice before Rhea picked up. "Peter." Her voice held a breath of hesitation, a quiet tremble like someone answering a call from a memory, not a man. "Yeah," he said. "It's late. I know. I needed to hear someone who didn't lie to me." There was a pause, then softly. "I'm glad you called." They met the next day at a small rooftop cafe overlooking the city skyline. One of those hidden places only locals knew, where time felt suspended and strangers sat without rush. The breeze was gentle that afternoon. Spring had just begun to push the cold away, and everything seemed caught between decay and bloom. Peter and Rhea didn't talk about the lawsuits or the gossip or the viral website that still echoed their pain across the internet. They talked about simpler things. The taste of bitter coffee. The sound of wind against windows. The way silence could sometimes feel like a hug if you let it. "You ever think we're just ghosts to them now?" Rhea asked, stirring her tea slowly like we existed only as obstacles, stepping stones to whatever fantasy they thought they deserved. Peter took a breath, eyes fixed on the horizon. "Maybe, but ghosts watch. Ghosts remember." They shared a faint smile. Two wounded people tethered by scars instead of vows. In the weeks that followed, they kept meeting. Not romantically, not for show. Just two survivors clinging to truth. There were no grand declarations. No sparks of forbidden love, just comfort, just realness. But Peter felt it one evening when they walked along the lakefront. Rhea reached for his hand gently, naturally, and he let her. The moment should have felt healing. It should have felt like a new beginning, but it didn't. It felt borrowed wrong somehow. Not because of her, but because Peter knew deep down he still wasn't whole. Not really. She noticed, too. Rhea had always been observant in the quietest ways. So, she let go. And they both understood without words that sometimes the kindest thing two broken people can do is not try to fix each other. That night, Peter stood in his kitchen washing dishes by hand. One plate, one glass, one fork. A ritual that had once felt lonely now felt deliberate, sacred. His life had been stripped of illusions. But in the naked silence, there was peace. He didn't date. He didn't seek out closure and arms that didn't belong to him. He went back to volunteering, but at a different center this time, miles away from where he had met Caleb. He worked the early shifts, the ones no one wanted. Quiet mornings. Handing out warm food to cold hands, listening to strangers with names he didn't need to remember. And he started writing again. Not revenge plots, not strategy, just stories, fragments of his thoughts, notes on humanity, pages he never showed anyone, but filled anyway. One day, nearly a year after it all, Peter got a letter. Handwritten, no return address, but he knew the handwriting like he knew his own breath. Meera. Inside was no plea, no apology, just a line. "I think about the quiet way you walked away. I hear it louder than any scream I've ever known." Peter folded the note and slid it back into the envelope. Then he placed it in a drawer, locked it, and never opened it again. Because the truth was, he had moved on, not with someone else, but with himself. His revenge hadn't been fire or fury. It had been dignity, precision, knowing who he was, and making sure they never forgot it. In a world full of betrayal, he had become something rare, unshakable, and that more than anything was what they could never take from.